Hello there and welcome to the Card Grotto. Today I'm layering up pigment inks to enhance embossing using embossing folders. So let's get started. I have cut the Altenew Terrific tag die 4 times from white cardstock. So I'm going to use 2 for the front and 2 for the back. For the fronts, I want to add some ink blending on top. So I'm using the Altenew Glacier Caves Pigment Ink Bundle for the first tag. And I've taken 2 of the darker blues. So this is Persian Blue and Sapphire. I'm going to add the lighter of the 2, the Persian Blue, at the top using an Altenew Large Ink Blending tool. I did lose a lot of this colour once I added in the darker shade. I was having one of those days where I just wasn't ink blending very well. I'm hoping that everyone else has that problem. Well, I don't hope that everyone has the same problem, but you know what I mean. I can't be the only one. Some days you're just good at something and other days you're not. So I'm adding in the sapphire at the bottom, and I did add quite a lot of this colour, like I said, so I did lose a lot of the lighter shade at the bottom, but I did still have a slight gradient where it was darker at the bottom and lighter at the top. But for the technique that I'm doing, it's actually quite good to have quite a dark base, so it worked out okay in the end. For the yellow tag, I'm using the Altenew Summer Afternoon Pigment Ink Bundle, and I've taken 2 of the mid-tone shades. So I'm starting off by adding the Warm Sunshine colour at the top. This time I did manage to keep some of the lighter colour on this ink blending. I did seem to ink blend this one a bit better, I'm not quite sure why. So I'm adding that colour just over halfway, and then I can add the caramel toffee at the bottom, so blending that towards the lighter colour at the top and then kind of blending the 2 together in the middle. I'm then going to run the tags through my die cutting machine using embossing folders. So for the yellow tag, I'm using the Altenew Cheerful Bloom 3D embossing folder, and I'm just placing the tag inside the folder. And the great thing with using a smaller panel like this tag is that I can move it as much as I want to and get that embossing just in the right place. So once I'm happy with the placement of that, I can run that through my die cutting machine, and that's going to leave that beautiful impression onto the tag. And these embossing folders are just so pretty. Because I'm using wet pigment inks here, I haven't dried them. There is some ink transfer in the folder, so I'm just going to clean that with some stamp cleaner, and that came off really easily. For the next tag, the blue one, I'm using the Altenew Decorative Florals 3D embossing folder, and this did take me a little while to figure out the placement of where I wanted the flowers to be on the tag. Once I was happy, I ran that through my die cutting machine as well, and it left the most beautiful impression. I really love how this one turned out. You could just leave it as is, but I am going to add a lighter colour over the top to enhance that embossing. So this is the Arctic pigment ink that comes in the Glacier Caves Pigment Ink Bundle, and I'm really lightly just kind of rubbing that on the top of the tag. I'm being really gentle to try and do this so that the ink doesn't go onto the kind of bottom of the tag. I really just want to sort of highlight the very top portions of that embossing. So now I'm kind of pouncing it into the tag, and although it probably looks like on camera I'm doing this quite forcefully, I'm being very, very gentle, but I like the look of kind of pouncing it in. I think it gives a little bit of a different look than kind of dragging it over the surface. And once I add some shimmer spray over the top, I feel like it kind of looks a bit like velvet. I think it's very pretty, but as you can see, just adding that lighter shade on top has really enhanced that embossing, and you can see the outline of the flowers and the leaves a lot easier. I'm going to do the same thing for the yellow tag, and this is the buttercream colour. Again, that comes in the same pigment ink bundle, the Summer Afternoon one. And for this one, I'm going to apply the ink first of all with an ink blending tool. Ideally, I would use a flat kind of ink blending tool rather than a domed one that I'm using, but I didn't have any in my stash at that moment in time, so I'm using a foam one. And the reason I'm using the foam blending tool as opposed to a brush is so that I'm trying to just kind of go over the very top portions again of that embossing. And the reason I'm not kind of going direct to the tag with the ink pad is because I was worried, because there's a lot less embossing on this tag, that I might get this colour like directly on the actual tag, but I still did it with that foam tool because it was a domed one. So I ended up just lifting up the ink pad in the end and pouncing it onto the tag, and I did get a better coverage of that lighter ink. There's not a huge amount of difference between this one because this colour is going onto a lighter base, whereas the blue was going onto a darker base, but it is still pretty, and you could absolutely do that with white pigment ink as well. So this is the Altenew Iridescent Shimmer ink spray, and I'm just going to spritz that onto the tag. And like I said, I think this kind of gives like a velvety look to the tags. Very pretty and really lovely and sparkly and shimmery in real life. So I did set those aside to dry, and then I'm going to work on the sentiments. So this is the Altenew Statement Flowers stamp set, and I'm going to stamp out the sentiment that says sending sunshine and warm hugs. I thought that that would work quite nicely on the yellow tag. And then I'm going to take the sentiment from the Altenew Builder Flower Iris set, and this one says hello sweet friend. I'm going to stamp both onto black cardstock. So I'm just adding those into the Mini Misty here, using an anti-static powder tool and wiping away the excess. And then I can stamp the sentiments with Altenew Embossing Ink. And this is a clear sticky ink so that the embossing powder that I add on top is going to stick to it. So I'm applying Altenew Pure White Crisp Embossing Powder. I'm applying it a few times, tapping off the excess, and then I can heat set those until they're completely melted. And I like to heat set from the front and the back. So just being careful not to kind of overheat the embossing powder. Once that's cooled, I can remove the excess anti-static powder with a cloth, and then I can cut those into strips. With the other tags that I cut originally, I'm going to add these onto the backs of the embossed pieces so that if I want to write a message onto the back of the tag, I can, and it's nice and clean. So just using some tape runner there just to kind of adhere those together, kind of back to back. The ink isn't completely dry at this point, so I'm trying to be careful not to get my fingers in it. And then I've got my sentiments here that I've cut into strips, and I'm going to add some Altenew Instant Dimension foam tape onto the back of those. And then I can just add both of those onto the tag, or the tags plural, I should say. Just using some tweezers there just to help me out with the placement. I can then finish off by adding some Altenew Essential black and white enamel dots onto the tags. So I'm using the white ones onto the blue tag. Just adding 5 of those kind of randomly along the tag. And then for the yellow one, I'm using the black enamel dots, and I'm just adding 3 around the sentiment. And then last but not least, I can add some twine through the top of the tags. And then I can tie that in a bow at the front. And then I can just cut the excess twine down with some scissors. And that's the tags finished for today. I really like how that lighter shade of pigment ink really enhances the embossing with the embossing folders. I do this quite often with white pigment ink, but I do really like the look of the colours of pigment ink as well, kind of layering on top of each other. Links to the products that I used will be in the description bar on YouTube and also over on my blog. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.